Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. We're here to investigate incest and destigmatize childhood sexual crimes. Many people don't want to talk about it. We do. With me today, I'm so excited for my next guest. Laura Ann is with me. And this story is a very unique story. I think millions of you will find yourself in this story. She has memory and recollections of some things in her childhood, but not everything. And that is the great crime that occurs as these things happen when we're small. And she and I were talking before this, and she talked about how it's a perfect crime of hell. And I really believe it is. There's a lot of darkness. So with that, Laura, I first want to ask you about your motivation to be here with us. I like to start there because it's interesting and everybody has a unique thing. So why don't you just tell us what motivated you to be here and to share your story today?
Well, I really wanted to free myself from feeling guilty about how I grew up. So I always felt guilty for being alive and doing things that I didn't know better doing, and for not protecting my children. So this is a good way for me to free my spirit from that bondage.
I love that. That's absolutely beautiful. And with that, I like people to just bring us into your story with what you're comfortable with. If we'll start with your childhood first. I know that I, as a mother, also lived with an abuser for 17 years. And under my watch, my children were raped by him. And it was probably the most devastating thing. I can still hardly say that without actually tearing up because it's incredibly hurtful. But I hadn't put my story together fast enough to protect my children. And when I did, I left. But it's a very hard puzzle to put together. The pieces are complicated, they don't seem to fit. So just bring us into your story of where you remember as a childhood. You were talking to me some about talking with your sister. Just bring us into that story with you.
Well, I went to my oldest sister, the oldest one of all of us. There's four girls and one little brother who is from a second marriage, who's my little brother, and I'm the baby of all the girls.
Okay.
So um, I started putting things together and pieces and healing when my sister paid for a course. It's called the Life Class with Oprah Winfrey, and it was in Houston. And my second to the oldest sister was upset that my sister was paying for the ticket and paying for everything for me because I was broke. And my oldest sister, she has been on a journey for a long time of healing and and spreading love. So she said this is one of the things she wanted to do for me, because I think she saw that I needed to heal because I look lost, and she's seen a lot of ups and downs, and me trying to find my path in life. And she also had adopted me when I was 17. She had helped me finish school because I was living in the streets. I would run away. I didn't know why I would always run away. So when she took over for me and took me to another state and helped me finish school, um, she became a mother figure. And so I think this was something she knew she had to do for me. And this changed my whole life. And it helped me to realize that being angry in this world is not the way to live. Oprah Winfrey had these wonderful speakers who were teaching me, because my sister made sure we went to that class every day for 3 days straight. My second to the oldest sister and my sister, who's 1 year above me, the middle sisters wouldn't go to the classes every day. But my oldest sister made sure that me and her went together all the time because she invited me. And so listening to the speakers, I realized that life is a journey and we can't give up on it, and that our mind is very powerful, and those negative thoughts can affect our life. And one thing Oprah would say is, you choose the life you want to live. And she helped me realize that I can manifest my dreams, and I don't have to be angry, because a lot of people have gone through things that I we wouldn't even imagine. and even Oprah Winfrey went through it. And she even came to our aisle where we were sitting, and everybody was bombarding her. And my sister was like, Oprah Winfrey's right there. And I was like, leave her alone. Let her be a human being. Let her just be there. She feels safe. She didn't have security because she even looked over at us and like had a surprised look because she felt safe. Like we weren't chasing after her. And I said, I realized some people just need to feel human. Leave her alone. She's like, are you sure you don't want to go say hi to her? I was like, no, look at her. She doesn't even have the security guards right there. Just let her be. And so we kept writing. So when she was visiting the aisles, she had asked us to write down what we wanted in our life. And I wrote something down about my son, and I didn't want to stop writing it because I wanted to dream big for him. And I wanted to write down exactly how I wanted his life to turn out. So that's why I left her alone too, because I was really focused. But that's when my healing started to begin. And I realized I'm not a bad person like I thought I was. And I have the right to be happy. So that's
okay. And so with that, you were talking to me a little bit about the sexual abuse that was in your past by family members. And one of the things that I thought you said were so interesting was that you have all these symptoms in your life, symptoms of doing things with children. I did things with children. I did things with my brother. My brother did things with me. You had all these symptoms in your life, but you didn't have the answer for why you were doing it. You just said, I ran away from home, but I didn't really know why. So talk to me a little bit about what you think is happening around the sexual abuse in your past, as you and your sister have discussed it.
I think a lot of things were hidden and made to look like I was a predator. I was a bad girl. But as I grew up, I grew a conscience. At 10 years old, I remember thinking, this is wrong. My little brother is who I was touching. And I don't remember. I have one memory of it. That's how I knew that it was wrong. I have one memory where I was like, why was I trying to rub on his penis? Like I wanted to put his penis in me, but I was just 6 years old. I don't even know if I was 6, but I know I was so little. And he was even littler. And I was like, why was I doing that? How did I even know about that? And at 10, I still didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, that's wrong. And then I would hump on anything. I would hump on poles, on a couch, I would on a doll. And then I have another memory where I seen an eyeball. There was a hole, like my room had a hole by the closet. And I was humping this bear. And I remember looking in that hole to see if anybody's watching me, and I seen an eyeball move. And I was like, so as a child growing up, I was like, what the heck is that? What was that? So when I got 10 years old, I was like, this is not right to be rubbing up on things. Like, why doesn't anybody stop me? Why do these adults just watch me and not tell me to stop? That's not okay. Like, they know what I have a vagina. They know I have a clitoris. They know what these parts are. And nobody's told me that's wrong. Or why are you doing that? Nobody investigated. So that's where I felt like I was a pedophile. I was a bad person. But I wasn't, because I stopped. And I knew it was wrong without anybody telling me. So I kind of got lost there, and that's where my mental, my mind is still healing, where sometimes I can't focus. Like I'll just block it out and stop talking about it. So sometimes like now you'll have to remind me, what were we focusing on? Because I don't want to talk about it anymore. You know, it still hurts. It's scary because I've never told anybody. I've never talked about this to my sisters. I've never told anybody.
Well, we are honored that you're here sharing that with us. And much of what you're going through, it is that trauma amnesia. And when it tries to come through, it's terrible. And I used to call it the fog of PTSD. And as memories would come through, I would just be in this kind of fog-like state, but mostly I'd want to run, drink, gamble, go be with a guy that, I didn't care if he was married or not married, because I just needed to get out of my memories, out of everything that my body was doing. And so part of, I think, that is so fascinating about talking to you today is where you find yourself. And so you have these triggered memories come up in your mind, but you stop them. Is that true?
Yeah, like right now, I'm forgetting what we were even focusing on because I can feel my mind doesn't want to remember because that's what I've
Right.
always done. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to remember, but I know talking about it is the healing part because that's what everybody has done is hid and kept secrets.
Right.
And that's what everybody's so used to because it's normal to go through these things. Everybody goes through these things. It's normalized and it's not normal.
It's not normal. And one of the saddest things that I'm hearing from you is that you actually remember the bad that you did as a child, but you don't remember explicitly the bad that happened to you. And truthfully, that's how pedophiles want us to feel. They want us to stay stuck in our story right there. They want us to feel bad. If there's a problem, we're the problem. They're not the problem. You're the one that wanted all this. You're the one that's nasty. All of these things. And they set us up to not trust ourselves in our own mind. And sadly, though, we remember our bad, but we don't remember their bad, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, where was your mother during these years? And so, did you live with your father? Did you live with other family members? What was going on in your life at that time?
Okay, so what happened? I have one good memory of when I was a little baby. I can remember I was so tiny. I was probably getting out of Pampers. That little. But I remember there was a trailer, animals, pigs, ducks, and I remember my sister riding a Shetland pony, and it was a neighbor's. And my sister told me that was the trailer we lived in when we
Mm,
mom and dad moved and bought their first trailer together, and we moved to Odessa. We moved from Pecos, the oil field town, to the next town to get out of Pecos. My mom asked my dad, "Get me out of here," because come to find out now, us daughters of my dad might have different fathers. So she
mm,
wanted to get out of Pecos and come to Odessa to get away from all that of the men chasing her. So I remember this beautiful scenery, but that's the only good memory I have. And
mm.
so of her and my, a family, us. And she said that's the trailer mom and dad had. And she goes, I can't believe you remember it. She goes, our neighbors had pigs, and our other neighbor had a pony he would let us ride. And then we had ducks and geese running around that were the neighbors. They weren't ours. So that's why I have that. And I love animals. Um, but my mom and dad went through a very traumatic thing where my dad wanted to adopt my mom's cousin's son. The little boy did not belong to my dad, but he wanted to go through the process of adopting a boy that was my age. I'm 42 right now. So we were probably, I'm guessing, little like 4
Mhm.
or 5. And I say that because I hadn't started kindergarten yet. And the little boy was murdered by his mom's, which is my mom's cousin, boyfriend.
Oh my goodness.
So the day that my dad, because this little boy would cry and pee on himself all the time. So my dad was okay with him peeing on himself. He was like, he's just, traumatized. This is why my dad wanted to adopt him, because the cousin couldn't take care of him because the boyfriend would beat him. And
Wow.
so he left them with my dad. But my mom was jealous, and my mom would say, that's not his son. Give him back. That's not your son. Because I'll tell her this story, and she'll still say those words. That wasn't his son. And I'm like, I get that, mom. But he was murdered. So he was, the cousin had came to ask for the little boy for one day because the boyfriend had his children. So then she felt like it was okay for them to be together with his children and her boyfriend. Well, the day that my dad was like, look, he cries a lot. Just if he's crying, bring him back. If he doesn't stop crying, bring him back. Well, instead of bringing him back, he was found murdered and thrown in a
Oh my
dumpster,
gosh.
beat to death with a medallion, a St. Christopher medallion
Oh
that
my
the man would
God.
wear. He had emblems beat on him, and then he tied his penis closed with a string and threw him in the trash. And they were trying to say that it was my dad who had murdered him, because at that same week, I'm thinking, my mom and dad broke up. And I'm thinking it was because of that. And then my mom was already seeing another man, which was my dad's brother's best friend.
Okay.
And this is who she married and had my little brother from. Anyway, so my dad took us away from my mom. Didn't He had to take us to the Ronald McDonald house to Lubbock, where they had flown him, because my mom didn't take care of us for some reason. My mom didn't have us. I don't know if it's because my dad didn't want to leave us with her. But for some reason, he had to take us with him to go see the little boy, see if he could make it. But he died. They couldn't save him.
Oh,
He
wow.
was already found dead, already dying. But the sheriffs were already trying to accuse my dad. And finally, my dad was released to take us and him to go visit little Robert. So then, for some reason, my mom didn't have us. And after that, I don't know. I don't have memories of my mom and dad together, but I have that one memory of that scenery. So my dad said he took us away from her because she was with a black man, and he always uses the word. And he wasn't going to leave us with her because of
So,
that.
okay. So you and your four
So
sisters are now with your father. And
yeah, for good.
so your mother isn't in the home again while you're growing.
Right. She
So,
didn't come around. So I have memories of my mom having custody of me, and um I remember drugs on the table. One memory was a plate on the table with white powder and straws. And I was gonna eat it because I thought it was a pixie stick and sugar. But I was very smart. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't think that's a pixie stick. And I looked at it and I didn't eat it. Um, but that's one of the vivid memories I have of being with my mom. But I don't remember good things when I don't remember
okay. So,
anything.
all right. So you don't have the protection of a mother in your house. And then
Right.
as your sister comes back to you, there is sexual abuse in your childhood though. So tell us a little bit about what you remember around those issues.
Well, I remember my sisters taking care of me, but I don't remember much. And I remember my dad cooking for us. I remember he would tell me, because I was really skinny, and he would tell me, you can't have this cake until you eat your food. So that's the only way I would eat, is if I had that sugar. Um, so, and then he would tell me, you can't drink any water, anything until you eat. So that's what I remember being raised as. And then I remember, um, as being little, I remember him buying us bikes, but I remember we used to have to share everything, like even shoes. We only got one pair of shoes, and even that we have to share. And clothes we had to share. But I don't remember him taking us anywhere until he found God. When he found God, I have memories of that, of him taking us to church. I have memories of because I have nothing but bad memories of the bad things I would do. And when he started going to church, I remember those things. And I remember the ladies teaching me how to wash dishes. I remember them telling me, don't put your hands in between your legs. Don't put your hands under the covers when you're sleeping. Don't wear pants. They didn't want us wearing zippers. They wanted us to be like a lady and wear dresses. They taught me songs about Jesus, This Little Light of Mine. Um, you know, uh, Jesus loves all the little children. So I remember those things. And then I also remember a lady at the apartments. My dad moved into projects. Um, and the projects, my sister said, were roach infested because my dad never cleaned. And they didn't know how to clean. But I didn't know that. I don't remember that. I just remember this apartment and how my dad would make me eat. Like he had a way of me eating. And if I didn't eat that way, I couldn't have sugar. And that I love sugar. I love to eat candy and stuff like that, and bubble gum. I remember that brought up another memory when I started daycare. It was down the street. He taught me how to walk to daycare by myself, and he would tell me I remember him giving me gum because the teachers would get mad at me every time I had gum in my mouth, and they would tell me you can't have gum. So I remember my daycare workers. I love them. Like I guess because they were so nice. And I remember playing dress up in daycare. Then I remember him teaching me how to walk to the bus when I started kinder. I remember walking through the snow.
Oh, wow.
As a little girl, I was walking through snow to get to school because he went to work and I walked by myself. But this must have been when my sister, I have a sister 1 year older than me. She wouldn't walk with me because my mom took over because she started having heart attacks. Like she was tiny, 7 or 8, and she started having heart attacks. So they ended up finding a
Oh,
hole in her.
your sister. Oh,
So she
wow.
got on, so I had to walk by myself to school, all the way from being a daycare all the way to high school. I walked to school.
Wow. Okay.
So then I just remember those kind of memories. And then as a teenager, I can remember as a teenager. And I remember walking from school one day, nobody picking me up from school. And for some reason, the school wanted somebody to pick me up. But it was probably because I remember them having to keep me after school because I refused to do work. I didn't do homework, but I was very smart. They would say that I was above average, but something was wrong with me. So they would stay after school with me to work on homework. So I'm thinking that's why they needed somebody to pick me up because it was so late. But I remember just taking off by myself because that's what I was used to. I was like, I can walk home. But I remember
Right.
getting lost. And I remember just like being confused, like, where am I? I'm lost. And I found my way to my mother's house. And I don't know how I did that because I crossed a really big street by myself and
Right.
found my mother's house.
Wow.
And then I also remember, like, see, and that's when my memory, like, when I do try to dive back in, I start forgetting, like, I don't want to talk about it. Like, it stops, like, my mind stops.
Right.
I
And
lose.
you have a lot, you stories that you're talking about. That's a lot of trauma stories. I mean, you had a lot of extended trauma in your childhood just listening to you. That's a severe murder of a little boy. I mean, all of these things, my mom may have had other children, everything that you just talked about.
Other
What
fathers, like, that is not the father
Yes.
of birth.
Right. I mean, just on and on and on. And then the loss of your mother and they get divorced. I mean, all of these things are incredibly traumatic. And it
Mhm,
sounds like to me one of the tools that you've used is denial, a lot of denial,
mhm.
except for the things that, came through story and that sort of thing. You talked to me a little bit about what happened to your children. And one of the things that you said was, I feel like this is a cycle that's repeating. What made you say that to me when you talked about, I'm not sure what abuse your children went through, but you think it's a repeating cycle? Why did you come to that understanding?
Well, because I've been on a path to find God and follow God and stop being this angry person who always had a mad face, and I didn't want children in this world, and I was always so angry at this world and I didn't understand. So that brought back a memory of something I do remember positive from my childhood, of a lady. She was like an angel. She would come to the apartments, the projects that we lived in, because I remember always being left outside. My dad never checked on me. I was outside sun up to sundown, whenever, however, who cared about me? This one lady cared about me, and she would gather all the little children that were outside the apartment and have Bible study with us. And she would give us a Bible, and she would tell us to insert these cards, index cards of the study, and she would give us stickers. So I remember taking that, doing those classes with her, and I loved it. And she would, like, stop me from adventuring alone outside or humping on some pole or finding something to, do that was not right. And she would gather us and teach us about God, and that was my first experience with God. Then and that's when my dad got that Bible and he threw it away. And I remember him saying, "You can't have this kind of Bible. I don't believe in this kind of Bible." But I was like, but how? She's teaching me about somebody who's like there. I don't remember who she was teaching me, but I knew he was good. And
Right. And
so
so
then,
this was
mhm,
different than, did your dad go to church at this time? Had he gone
no,
to that church? It was later that he went to
no
the
church
church.
at all. I don't.
Okay.
She was the first church I remember.
Okay. Go ahead and
And
keep
then
going.
after that, I remember my dad found a church and he started following Jesus Christ and God, and he started actually going on We went on adventures in cars with other church members, and I remember it being a house. And that's when I met these beautiful women who were teaching me how to be a little lady, teaching me how to wash dishes, what a girl and a boy is, what I'm not supposed to do, what I am, what is okay, what's not okay. They wouldn't spank me, they wouldn't hurt me, but they would punish me by saying, we're not going to spank you, but we will make you write down this over and over if you do something wrong. And then I remember them singing songs, and it was just teaching me about Jesus. This little light of mine is what got me through my teenage years, of knowing there was this light. I don't know what it is, but there is a light out there.
Right.
So
No, it's beautiful. I go ahead. Take your time.
my dad stopped going, and I never understood why. Why did you stop going there? Because I remember when he stopped going, I think this abuse started again, of being in a nasty house, not being taken care of. Him making my sisters take care of me like if they were the wife and they're not. Being left alone with my second to my oldest sister, and her doing things to me that she didn't know better because somebody was doing it to her. And my oldest sister was gone now, and I didn't know why. So my older sister ended up telling me she left at 14, and my dad would make her make tortillas. He would make her take care of us like if she was the wife. And she said she started her period, and he wouldn't buy her stuff for her period.
Mm.
And then that just brought up a memory. He wouldn't buy us toilet paper. He would make us use newspapers. He wouldn't buy, it. Yeah, and I didn't realize this was wrong because he made it normal. And my sister was like,
yeah, it sounds like you didn't know a lot was wrong. Love.
Yeah, and my sister was like, I had to leave, Lori. I couldn't take care of you. Later on, she told me, I'm sorry I left you. But it wasn't her fault.
Right.
But she said she left, and he told her he would never talk to her again. He would disown her, and she left with my mom. Because my sister, who was 1 year older than me, left with my mom. And I didn't know why I couldn't leave with my mom. But the only reason she could leave was because she started having those heart attacks. And my dad wasn't taking care of her right. And my mom convinced him, let me have her, I could take care of her. Then my older sister left. And she said because she started her period and she wasn't getting the help she needed to learn how to be a woman. And then he stopped going to church. So those women weren't there no more to help us. So my sister Debbie took over as a mother. And then Debbie, I remember she would take me everywhere with her. That's my second to the oldest sister. And I remember she would run the streets and she would have me with her as a little girl. And I remember these older boys who were part of her gang, they would take care of me. I don't remember them hurting me at all. I don't remember anything bad about them. I just remember them calling me little Coco. I guess because they called her Coco because she's chocolate skin, like she's darker than me. But I remember them kind of being like big brothers, protective. And so she would have me with her in the streets. And so then I got over.
That probably felt better than home.
Yeah, I probably did because we didn't get any attention. Once he left the church, we didn't get that positive attention no more. And all we got was no attention. And then my uncle, I remember him moving in. But the only memory of him is I remember being on the floor. He was asleep on the couch. And I remember this memory. And I'm like, why was I on the floor next to him? I was sleeping on the floor. If that's my house and I have a bed and my sisters are gone and the only sister left is the one who's running the street. So I was alone probably with him and I was sleeping on the floor. And I was like, why? Then, I remember that other thing about the eyeball, somebody watching me doing that. And I'm like, why? Why was I doing that? Why were they watching me? Why didn't they stop me? Who was watching me?
Right.
Then I remember having vivid dreams of some man walking the hallway because we lived I had a bedroom, but I would pee myself. I remember always peeing myself because I remember my dad making fun of me. Haha, you smell your panties every time to see if they're clean. And I was, those memories are coming up as a teenager. And I'm like, why was he laughing at me? Why didn't he help me? And then I remember having these nightmares where I would go to my dad's room and sleep with him. And I remember him being in underwear. But it's like I would hear somebody walking the hall stomping and something scaring me, like dark shadows. And I remember always being scared. And then so I would run to my dad's room and sleep with him. And this is when my little sister, I mean, my oldest sister, we were little, she had left with my mom. So I was alone. And then my sister was always gone. I remember her always being gone too. But when she did have me, she would have me with her in the streets. So then I remember being alone with my uncle, and I didn't know why. Why do I have a memory of being on the floor next to him? Why would I be asleep on the floor? It was weird.
Right.
And then being that little girl who was humping things and doing nasty things. And then if I had a little boy next to me, I would hump him. And but I
Right.
didn't know better. So I was like, why would they leave me alone with the little boy? Why would they leave us alone? Because the parents were busy doing something and my sister was very busy doing something. So they thought us children were out of the way. And so now when I don't leave my children alone, especially my daughter, I won't leave her alone with boys because I know what window could be open when you're not watching them. And people think I'm weird. Oh, you're just sick in the head thinking that way. And I'm like, no, you don't leave a little girl alone with little boys. You don't.
Mm-hmm.
No, how could you think that way? You're nasty. You're messed up in the head. That's what the dad of my children say. But I
Oh,
know what.
my ex-husband used to say that to me as well. It's because you're fucked up, Jody, because of your past, and this is why it's happening to, you're saying it's happening, and all the while he was molesting them. If you'd like to share a little bit about the story about your daughter that you shared with me, you're welcome to do that.
So all these things I was healing from. And I was always, why? So I finally asked my sister what happened, and she told me about my cousin, and it might have been him. And my mom, I started talking to my mom about it. But the main reason it brought up the questions that I questioned my sister was because my daughter at 4 started talking about, she said, Mom, I want to tell you something. My dad's doing something to me bad. And when the first day she told me that, we were on a trampoline. We were at my sister's house, my second to oldest, the one who had to take care of me when I was little. We were at her house and we were on the trampoline in her backyard. And we were looking up at the sky, me and my daughter. And I'm teaching her about the heavens, how the stars are the light in the darkness. And that's what I've always done with both my children. Since they were little babies in my arms, I would go outside at the nighttime and show them, look, there's the moon. And that's God's light in the darkness. And I would sing them lullabies and I would look at the heavens in the night. I don't know why, but I knew the light in the darkness was good. And I wanted the kids to know that. So when I got the opportunity to sit there on the trampoline with my daughter and look at the stars, we were looking at them and I was talking to her about God and about the light. And then she just turned her face and she said, Mom, I want to go inside. But right before that, she opened up to me and we're looking at the stars. She goes, Mom, and she was only 4. She goes, I have something to tell you about my dad doing bad things to me. And I was like, what is it, Marley? And then she looked up and she's like, I want to go inside. I was like, why? What's wrong? Well, there's a bad man in the sky and he's telling me Jesus is not real. And I'm like, Marley, I can't see him. I can't see him, but okay, we'll go inside. She goes, please, Mom, go inside. There's a bad man in the sky. I was like, the sky is not bad, Marley. It's not bad. She goes, he's in the sky. And when she told me that he had told that to her, I knew that was a lie. And so I took her inside and I went to my sister and I told her, I went to her bedroom and she was sitting in her bed with her husband and they were watching Joel Osteen and they were watching him preach. And I said, look, sis, I gotta go. Marley just really scared me. I don't want to ruin anything, but she just told me something scary and I don't know what to do. So we're just gonna go. And I told her what she said and she just like looked and then I saw them watching Joel Osteen and I'm like, I couldn't put it together. So then I left it alone. I never questioned her about it. I never thought to question her about it. I never crossed my mind again. I just got distracted by the devil or by this bad man in the sky. So then New Year's come around 2019. Marley can talk better. And then she tells me, not about her dad, but she tells me about her babysitter, which is her dad's niece. Her dad has a niece that is the same age of us. So she is the babysitter, which she put me through a lot trying to take away the kids from me. But she said, I have something to tell you about Ray. Bill Ray. He's doing something to me, Mom. But before she said that, what he was doing, the reason why she opened up was because one day we were walking up the stairs around after New Year's. And I remember it was after New Year's because the dad had them on that New Year's, and it was kind of scary, but I still have to give him custody of the kids because we have an agreement, and he would enforce it every time. So when she came back, we were walking up the stairs, and she was like, she goes, Mom, do you think I'm pretty? And I'm like, yes, you're beautiful. She goes, well, do you think I'm pretty when I'm naked? And I'm like, hold on, little girl. And we're walking up the stairs. Why are you saying this to me? And then I stop her and I take her to her room. I was like, what are you talking about, pretty when you're naked? She goes, well, Bill Ray tells me I'm pretty when I'm naked. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I have to report this. So I call the deputy and I make a report. I use the word custody. I say the dad has taken me to court for custody. We've been going through things, so that's why he had her. He was in her custody. And then it's the babysitter. So ever since then, every time I would make a report, because I didn't know what I would do, because she started talking after that. And I started asking her questions. She started opening up and telling me things I couldn't understand. So all I knew to do was report it. If you know something's happening, report it.
Yes.
So I did that. But because I brought up that word custody, and I didn't know that that's a bad word, because they make it a bad word.
Right.
So they said it was a custody battle.
Right. They
She's
do.
saying that she's reporting these things because she wants custody of her kids. And I'm like, what? So I read the reports, and they put wording, they twisted the wording. These deputies twisted it. And I'm like, I was just reporting what she was telling me. These deputies were supposed to investigate, not twist it around. And so they made it like, oh, she's saying this for custody because, so every time Marley would tell me something, I would call the police and tell them, she's saying this now. So this really nice deputy said, look, his name was Detective Rainey. She said, he said, look, stop calling. Every time she tells you something, don't call us. You need to write it down because they're going to make you look crazy. And his name, I remember it was a rainy day. So I don't know if this is why he said his name was Detective Rainey. And he said, because I don't know if he wanted to tell me who he really was. But I'm so grateful for him because he told me the truth, that they were making me look like I was crazy. He goes,
Right.
stop calling it in every time. You need to write this down. Just write it down. And I was like, why? I was so confused. I thought we were supposed to do this. So then come to find out, the last report that I made to the deputies, because I had to get a lawyer, and the lawyer told me I can't call in any sexual abuse anymore, that I had to go to her. And the reason why was because the last one that I called in that day was weird, because I was taking her a bath and I was getting ready for a boxing match because my uncle owns a boxing ring, and my cousin invited me to go with her. So she was at my home and I was getting ready, but I sent my daughter upstairs to take a bath. And then she said, Mom, I'm done. So I went upstairs, made sure she was clean. I said, did you clean your areas? And I would teach her how, but I wouldn't like show her how, because I already knew she was telling me things. So I would just make sure you clean on the outside. And I wanted her to show her how she did it by herself. And so that nobody else would have to touch her when she's naked. And she goes, Mom, I have something to tell you. My dad, he does this to me. And she tapped on the shower wall, sitting down in the bathtub. And I was like, gosh, I was like, Marley, oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to call them. They're not, I'm thinking this in my head. They're not going to help me. But I had to call him because she's actually telling me that he's
Right. Right.
doing something to her
Right.
like this. And so I go downstairs and I put the towel on her and I get her out. And I remember going downstairs to my cousin and I tell her, I'm not going to make it to the boxing match. I have to. Marty just told me something. And she's like, what? And I was like, I don't want to tell you. And she's like, just tell me. And so I told her and she started saying, oh, you do this and you do that. And I'm like, I was already trying to focus my mind and not get overexcited or dramatic or cry. So I told her, okay. I didn't tell her that I had been going through this and I already knew what to do. I already knew what they were going to do. Nothing. They were going to take the report. CPS was going to take the report and they were going to do nothing. But this time was different. This time when I called the deputies and reported it, my cousin was there. They show up, but they didn't show up. The deputies didn't show up. It was a private detective who lived 3 doors down from me, but he had moved out. And another detective lived there because in the apartments I live in, they let the police officers live there for free. Well, come to find out that detective had lived there and I didn't know him. But I knew now of him because he came in my house. My cousin had went outside to step outside. And I don't know why she stepped outside. I don't know if it was to talk to them or say, we're here. She called because she was like, let me write this down for you. Let me write it down. And I was like, you can do whatever you want. I already know what to do. So I let her write it down, her story. And then she's like, you call CPS first. Then you call the deputy. I was like, no, I call the deputies. But okay, if you want to do that, go ahead. I was just trying to compose myself and not go crazy.
Well, that's huge what you just heard your child disclose. Huge. I mean, that's a normal response, love.
So then that undercover detective comes in. My cousin goes and sits down. She goes outside and then she brings in some earbuds and she was like, look what I found on the floor, and then comes in, but she didn't shut my door completely. But I didn't realize that when she came in, she didn't close the door all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I serve her a bowl of food because I'm just trying to be normal. I'm just trying to act like everything's okay with Marley. And I asked her, just sit down and eat, Mama. You just had your bath. I'll take care of it. It's okay. And then so my cousin goes and sits down on the couch and kind of is like watching the show. So then I'm serving my daughter and a man enters my door, not knocking. And then behind him is a detective. Is a deputy with his hand on his gun. And I was like, he didn't knock. He didn't ring the doorbell. He just walked in. So when I watched the video, my cousin had entered. She sat down. I gave her the food. She sat down and started eating. And then they entered because she didn't shut the door all the way. But my Vivid captures motion. So because the door wasn't closed all the way, it didn't capture the ding ding, but it captured the motion. So it saw them coming in without being invited. Nobody invited them in. This man, he goes, first thing he says, oh, hi, because he saw I was like, what the fuck? And he's like, you remember me? And I didn't remember him, but I just said, uh-huh. He goes, yeah, I used to live 2 doors down by you, but I'm in civilian clothes because I'm not technically at work right now, but I heard the call, so that's why I came. And then I seen the deputy, and he had a mad face on him, and he had his hand on his gun. And I was like, that's not normal. That's not what they do. They usually just bring one deputy, they take the report, and that's all they do. And CPS calls me, and that's all they do. Take my story, and that's it. They don't do anything. And but I know I have to report it. So it was different this time. And he goes, yeah, oh, I just wanted to come in just to tell you there'll be another detective coming in. His name's Christopher. He'll be coming in and da 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 da. And I'm like, okay. He's from the CPI or something, because I learned that I had to call the deputies because the jurisdiction that the dad and the uncle, not uncle, it's a cousin's husband, but she actually calls her mom. But then she calls her Tia. Theo Ray is her boyfriend, but she wanted her to call her mom. Anyways, they're in a district where jurisdiction, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
where it's for the deputies and not for the city police.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have to call the sheriff's department. So I'm like, this is weird. I don't know who CPAI is. I don't know what's going on. Why did this man just walk in my house without being invited? And this deputy has his hand on his gun. That was weird. Like, I didn't do anything wrong. They're supposed to come help us. Come to find out, this investigator shows up. He's child protective something. And he's trying to lock me up because he's saying I'm making false reports. So
Oh, wow.
I go pull all the reports that I made because I found out I have the right to do that. And I read the reports, and these deputies have twisted the words and not said what I said and made it look like, and they put in there, this is about custody. And I was like, no, it's not.
Oh.
Like,
So
I've given
what
the deputy.
what ended up happening that with this case then? Did it move forward? Did they protect her? Did
No,
they help her in any
no,
way?
no. This city, nobody has protected us. Not even Harmony Home, who is there for abused children. The counselor there actually said maybe he didn't even touch her on the inside. Maybe he poked her on her panties. And there's worse cases than this. And I'm like, really, lady? She goes, you don't think you need help? You need a counselor? And I'm like, why are we here? Are you really getting paid to do this? You're not protecting children. So, anyways, that's where it gets it's heartbreaking and it's
Mm-hmm.
so traumatizing. Like,
It
this
is.
town, it's scary because I had to hire a $6,000 lawyer and I don't have $6,000. So I
Right.
had to take it from my dad. But before I took it from my dad, I had to cry to him. And you know what I told him? I said, if you're not a child molester, then you should let me have this money because it's to protect my daughter from being molested. And then he came out of his pocket and helped me. After I said that, if you're not a child molester, then you will help me.
So
Then he
where,
helped me.
oh yeah, it's so often the case. Where is the case at now? Can you tell us?
Dropped it. Nobody, the lawyer took my $6,000. She said she closed the case because she couldn't get a hold of me. And she said basically there is nothing we can do about them entering your home. The camera footage that I had disappeared from my phone, disappeared from my Vivid account. It disappeared. Then she denied that I ever even emailed it to her. And she said, I never saw anything. When that's the whole reason I called her, because they were trying to lock me up and say that they were going to lock me up because they wanted to question me. And then because they entered my home with their hand on their gun. And then it was the unmarked police officer entering my home with the deputy behind him with his hand on his gun. And I
Right.
know that's illegal. And she goes, well, did they do anything? I was like, no, they didn't hurt me, but I didn't invite him in my home.
Have you, so yeah,
So
and I'm so sorry. What do you do today then to protect you and your daughter?
I can't do anything. All I do is when she tells me something, which she hasn't, but I always ask her, are you okay? Are you safe? Is anybody still hurting you? And she's like, Mom, can I ask you what did happen to me? What did I tell you? And I was like, I'm not telling you if you don't remember, I'm not telling you.
Right.
You've got to remember on your own. And
Well, yeah,
all
I
I
can.
do, all I do is I pray. All I do is I pray that she's covered in the blood of Jesus Christ, and my son is. And then if the dad starts being violent, mentally talking to me wrong, I'll ask him to meet at the police department. I will call the police if I need to, but I don't. I'll call them only if somebody's trying to hurt me because I don't even feel like they're gonna protect me. They're just there with
Well,
the gun to
right. I
kill.
I mean, I can share a similar experience. My girls are now grown. My oldest is 38 and my little one is 36. And when we left their father, who was a horrible abuser, I have scars on my body. He was horribly abusive to us all. So my daughter was they were 15 and 12. She went back to her dad's house. Her dad left a big knot on her face. The cops were called. He was arrested. This is after I left the home with the girls. Anyway, she discloses sexual abuse to the officers that were there attending her for this her dad punched her in the face. And they investigated it for a minute. They released the dad the next morning, and I got a call a few months later, and he said, well, look, this was a long time ago, and it was just touching. It wasn't rape. Well, later she remembered that it was rape, but they did nothing to protect us. Absolutely nothing. And I said to him, you need to call her and tell her that you're not going to do anything to protect her. But what I did do, Laura, was I never continued. I didn't stop our healing. I continued to heal myself as a mother. I got into counseling then at 35. I'm almost 60 now, but that was 35. And I, for 20 years, healed, recovered memories, and then showed them how to heal and recover memories. And I just pray the same thing for you and your children. But I just want to tell you, my heart breaks for this. This is one of the reasons why I want to do this, because victims out here are not heard. The cops do not like these cases. They do not like to touch them. My father murdered a woman when I was 3. While they find me credible, they don't do a damn thing about it. And so the best that we can do is heal our lives, teach our children how to heal their lives. And I want to just say that to you, because I resonate so strongly with your story. I understand it. I was in the same boat. They were not going to help me and my girls. So I taught us how to help ourselves through fantastic counselors. Faith, oh my God, God has been in our court every second of the way. My daughter was a heroin addict then for 10 years because she didn't receive help. And she had to go through these memories of being raped, the last time at 15 by her father. So I guess I just want to encourage you to believe yourself, trust in yourself and in your memories, and then go forward the best way you can. Do you have a counselor that you see? What are you doing? Journaling, all of these things. What are you doing in your life now for you?
Well, writing is really hard for me to do. So what I do is I'm just finding God. I'm just giving my life to God.
Yeah, good.
Telling him
And
to take over every day. I take one day at a time
I know.
because I can't even trust the counselors in this town, because I've taken my daughter to counselors and all they would do is ask about my boyfriend. All they would do is ask questions about a boyfriend. And I'm like, they're supposed to be letting her talk, her
Right.
heal. Why are
Right.
they asking her questions about me and
Right.
my relationship? And then also the counselors that I did take her to, Harmony Home, who are supposed to protect children, and then CPS, who are supposed to protect children, are the ones who hurt us and didn't protect them. And they said, Mommy, I can't go home with you now. And I'm like, no. And because they said that in front of them, they said, what if I told you your daughter said you told her to say this? I was like, I did tell her to say this. I told her to tell her story to y'all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And well, she said that you told her to say this right before y'all came in. I said, I did. I told her, tell them everything you told me. Right before we came in, I told her, but you're flipping it around like a bad thing. I didn't
Right.
tell her what to say. So that's what they did. Instead of protecting us, they turned it around. And then they made me go to MHMR and get a mental evaluation because the dad said I was crazy because of what I did when I did the last day that we were together. He took my daughter and she was in Pampers, took off with her, and when he brought her back, because I guess he was like, oh shit, what do I do? My son's still over there. He brought her back. And then I busted my head on the floor and I busted my head open and I said, and I still have the scar. And I said, if you take her, I'm gonna tell the police that you did this to me. Don't take my children from me. And then he tried to punch me and I had my daughter in my arms and he went to swing at me and I grabbed the knife. And I was about to stab him. And then I saw my little boy just looking at me. And I was like, don't you think it's about time you leave? Can you just leave us? Please, just leave my kids and leave. I don't want to
Right.
hurt you. And I put the knife down and he left. But he ended up taking my kids because when I went to the crisis center, who was supposed to protect me, I told them that he threatened to murder me and the man that I wanted to move on with, who didn't even live in this town yet. But because I put on Facebook that I was engaged to him, but he didn't even live here yet. We had a long distance relationship because I told him, you can't come to town yet. You can't come here with me. I'll go visit you because I don't know how the dad's going to be. And sure enough, he threatened my life. So I went to the crisis center and they made me sound like I was crazy. They didn't protect us. They actually told the police where I was when they weren't supposed to. So they
I'm
fired my
so
counselor.
sorry. I'm so
My
sorry. What
counselor,
can you
I
tell
was
me?
trying to.
Can you
He kept saying that I was missing. She's missing. I was like, yes, I am missing. I
Right,
don't want to tell
right.
them where I'm at.
Oh, abusers, they're classic and they all act this way. Tell
So
us what you went to the mental health. I just want to stop there real quick. Tell us what that mental health evaluation came out because long standing I mean, it's in movies. You're either nuts or sluts, right? And so tell us though, I bet that evaluation did not show that you were crazy. Go ahead and tell us what that
exactly.
about is. So that's why I wanted to stop you. Tell us what the medical evaluation said.
Well, I went to MHMR voluntarily. CPS asked me to go. They were like, well, he's saying you're crazy. And I was like, I prayed about it. And the Mormons were the ones who were talking to me. Like they were getting me through it. Ever since the baby Elijah was born, my baby boy, they had knocked on my door and I opened the door to them and I started talking to them. So then I never converted because I told them I can't believe what y'all believe, but I really appreciate the stories you and the Bible study and all these, you let me talk to y'all about God. So the Mormons were like, you should go. Like you shouldn't make them court order you. You should just go. If you're not
Right?
crazy, you're not
Right?
gonna be found crazy. And he was like, just have faith in God. He'll be there with you. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go. Fuck it.
Mhm.
Because if I'm crazy, I'm gonna get
Good.
a check. I'm gonna
Right?
get a check anyways. And maybe I need to get help if I'm crazy.
Right.
So I
No, I get it.
and she's like, do you hear voices? I said, yeah, I hear voices. I talk to all kinds of invisible spirits. I have God in my life. I pray. I hear voices in my head. I thought that's called a conscience. And she's like, well, yeah, that's okay. That's normal. And I'm like, okay, so you want me to say I don't hear these voices? You want me to say I don't speak to God? Like, I was thinking in my head, these people really want me to say no, I don't hear voices? Yes, I hear voices. I hear voices. I didn't tell her that I hear voices telling me to kill myself. I didn't tell her that I hear things that are supernatural that I can't explain.
Mhm.
But I told her I do hear voices. I do, and I talk to
It's
Jesus, and he's
honest. We all do. I mean, but I think what she means, right? The like schizophrenia, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
yeah, so keep going. So how did the evaluation then
Still,
come out?
so she was like, so I was looking at these people that did look crazy. They were a little off that were in there, and I was like, I don't look nothing like this. And she was looking at me, and I was put together, and because I like to look nice, but sometimes I don't feel nice, so I won't look nice. But most of the time, I like to look nice. And she's like, you know what? I think you're pretty normal. I don't think you're crazy. Do you think you're crazy? Do you want help? And I was like, if you want to give me a check every month, heck yeah, I want help. She's like, no, we can't do that. I don't think you need help. I was like, oh, I need a check every month though. And she's like, no, we don't just do that. I was like, okay, well, then I guess I'm not crazy, but I think I'm a little crazy, but okay, you don't want to give me a check. That's fine.
Right,
And
right.
I think that's how
So
I cope.
the evaluation did not come out and say you have a mental illness.
Right. She just,
Right.
because I've always coped by smoking marijuana since I was a kid. Since I was so I've had an addiction to marijuana that I've always fought. I'll be on and off, on and off.
Mhm.
So that's what I told her. I was honest. And she was like, well, here's some drug counselors. And, I have to report this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So CPS gave me a hair follicle. They made my daughter cut her hair. They made my son cut his hair. They made my daughter go through a traumatic, whenever she told me that, they made my daughter ask me, why did you let them take a picture of me, mom, down there? And I
Mm,
didn't know how to tell her that's not okay, but at that moment that was okay. And I was like, I can't
right.
even say that because it's not okay. Because what I saw when I took her into the hospital, because they had to do a rape kit on her, because I reported that, um, deputies came in. So we're in the back in the emergency room with, and I could see the window, and I see two or three deputies scatter towards to where my daughter has to be taken. So I'm waiting by myself, and my daughter's over there with this nurse, who this nurse said, I'm going to have to question her alone. You can't come with us. And we're going to have to do some invasive things to her. And I want to tell you, I'm going to be there with her. So then I see these three deputies going by, and I'm like, why are they going over there? They're going to
Mm,
watch her? They're going to look at her vagina? Like, that's nasty. Then I see the Harmony Home supervisor scatter over there. And she just goes and like walks by and doesn't say hi. And she just like, a side eye and then takes off. And I thought that was weird. Why are these people scattering over there to see my daughter get this violation? They're violating her. So my daughter comes back and she goes, Mom, why did you let them take pictures of my vagina? Because I taught her that vagina word, because I learned you use the word of body part.
Right. Yes.
Don't give
Yes.
the nickname. And she goes, why did you let them? And she took a pinch, Mom. She just told me, I'm just gonna take a pinch, and she pinched me down there. Why, Mom? Why did you let them do that to me? And I was like, Marley, I don't know what to tell you. The lady is supposed to help you. She's supposed to help you. And the lady came back, the nurse, and she goes, she did tell me alone. She told me what happened to her without you being there. She told me that. So this should hold up in court. Did it? No. They, what the Harmony Home told me, the Harmony Home for Abused Children told me, good luck on ever trying to get a hold of that report. You will never get a hold of that report. And I have never been able to get a hold of it.
Laura, so we're at our hour. We're actually over our hour, but I'll tell you, talking to you, it's millions of stories like yours. Number one, the infrastructure on our police and our court systems, they just don't have enough. If there's millions of us, can you imagine if we all came forward? I would love if one day every person who came through incest, not even your neighbor down the hall, incest, if everybody stood up in one day, our courts and our police stations would not be able to handle them. Everybody should go to every city and say, Me Too, because Me Too is just a small scratch in the bucket of real deep childhood sexual crimes. And so I'm so sorry, but that's why we're here. And I know that your voice today will help other moms and fathers around the world stand up and protect their kids anyway. It doesn't matter what they tell us. Nobody ever really said I was nuts, but you always feel that way when you stand up for your children. But then it almost feels like you have to go underground because nobody's going to be there to protect you. But I was not going to let my children stand with their dad because their father was a pedophile, period. And he's a horrible man, and he's always been a horrible man. And so I guess, the moral of everything that we've talked about here, and I thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty. I just pray, I'll be praying with you for your continued healing. The best thing that you can do now for you and your daughter is to heal yourself. Take your eyes off the people who have hurt you and look at your own story. I love this. You see you. I know that an angel told me one time, Jody, you see you. Because the problem was, Laura, I kept looking at everybody else and I was powerless. Every time I put my eyes and my focus, took them off Jesus and put them on somebody else, I was powerless. But when I kept God in the forefront and I looked at myself, all of a sudden the pieces made sense. All of a sudden my memories came back. All of a sudden my children started healing. My daughter is no longer on heroin. She's been clean and sober for 9 years now, 10 years, and she is an amazing mother to beautiful children. Our lives have healed. So I would tell you, you're getting married next week. Go into that marriage looking at yourself and taking your eyes off the abusers, because what your children need now is the best healed version of you that they can ever have. So in the last minutes that we have, if there's anything that we haven't talked about or touched on, again, I just want to thank you so much for this honesty and vulnerability. And I know there's millions around the world that share this experience. What would you like to share with us in the last few minutes that we have together?
I just feel like God is working through me to share my story so that we can know that God is always with us. He's always there. He's going to hold my hand through this life so that the devil doesn't break me like he wanted to. And he can't have my soul, and he can't have my children either, because I'm going to teach my children about God, and I have. And I'm doing my very best. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm letting them know there is God and there is Jesus Christ who wants us to live forever. And that is how I'm healing, because I know nobody's perfect and we still have to have this dad in our life. So I've learned not to talk bad about people, and that's right, to focus on me as a mother healing. Because if I'm not healed, and if I go crazy, like people have said, oh, if that was my child, I would have killed them. No, you wouldn't. because then who's going to take care of those children?
That's
Who's going
right.
to teach those children about God?
You're
Who's
right.
going to make sure that they have that light instead of that
They
darkness?
need you. They need you.
So if I'm not healed, then how am I going to take care of the children? So I'm not going to let this system, this evil world that the devil tries to control, and God is my lawyer. God is my
Yes.
healer. God
Yes.
is my protector. He's my provider. It doesn't matter if I'm dirt poor. My life, I'm alive, and I'm not going to be suicidal, and I'm not going to lose my life. And I'm going to take this life one day at a time and be a good example, and be a good human being, and spread that word good, to be good, because
Yes.
that's all that matters in this world. And that's why I chose to have children. And I prayed to God, and I said, forgive me for cursing myself for I never wanted children on this earth, because I knew I had went through something, and I didn't want my children on this earth to go through it. But I found out that God, when we go through traumatic things, it's only going to make us stronger, because even though it looks like it's happening over again, it's because I have to heal, and I have to heal that. I have to break that chain of this spirit of incest, and this
Mm-hmm.
that wants to take
Yes.
control of the next generation. So if I teach my children about Jesus and about God, I pray to God they teach their children, and then we can start breaking these chains. And that's what I feel
Yes.
my life, my life is meant for.
I love it. It's absolutely beautiful. And I just want to leave with this. When Jesus was here and walked this planet, one of the things that he said is, if you harm one of my little ones, it would be better that a millstone be put around your neck and you thrown into the deepest water. So for any pedophile or any of you predators who are out there listening to this, God's watching, and you will pay one day. There is accountability. Thanks for being
Yes.
here, and we'll see you next time.